you have to ask yourself, well, God, did you give me a dream already to take on that next mountain instead of reliving the same life I've lived over and over again? To take risk, or as we say, faith. Faith is spelled R-I-S-K. So have you thought about taking a leap forward? Welcome to the Leveraging Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Gerhardt. Every time that we're together, I want to help you work less, make more, and with the freedom that you gain and the margin that you start to store up, you're going to be able to use that to be an incredible kingdom leader, an amazing spouse, and a parent to children who will follow in your faith because you're leading a compelling, authentic life. Not just rules and regulations, not just behavioral modifications, but living a life that will show God's light and brightness in you. I'm so excited to be with you again here. I want to talk to you today about my story and to go a little deeper there so that you can see a process that can only be credited to God. It's a story that is really incredible and was the launch of my completely rearranged life. But before we get there, I just got to tell you, we are having a spectacular season here. The weather in North Texas is amazing. Some people don't believe me because they haven't lived here before, but I'm telling you, about once or twice a month, you're going to get California weather in North Texas. It's spectacular. Now, it's true. It will definitely be hot for periods of time. It will often be colder than maybe you're used to. But I tell you, if you're from the north, coming down to Texas, it's incredible. Now, you don't need me to sell many of you who are considering whether you should have a life in Texas, if it's a good idea. I think it is. I think it's amazing here. The people are amazing. The weather is incredible. But God has allowed me to live in lots of extraordinary places. Most of my life has been spent on the coasts, whether the East Coast in Florida or the West Coast in California, majority of my life in California. And to be able to live in places like Switzerland or here now in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, really incredible places. And what a time to be here, where we're seeing so many things. We're expecting so much change as a result of the election here and what's coming next year. We're already seeing markets change, geopolitical things starting to move very fast. And so, yeah, the world's changing. I can't believe what I'm seeing. But for me, update is that I'm still in a cast. Now, some of you know that it was a spill that I took on a hill in Maui some weeks back. And while I was there, I was not expecting to end up in the emergency room. And the moment that I landed back from Maui into surgery to repair my very broken and torn up ankle. But that's what happens. Surprises happen. And God's been good. I've seen less pain and things are getting much better very quickly. But still in this cast, still on crutches, still hobbling around. Gratefully, we were able to get a golf cart quite fast, and that allows me to get around this property without trying to attempt to get from the house to these different buildings in crutches, because, I don't know about you, but I'm just not able to sit on a couch all the time and work. Working from home is fine to an extent, but I need to get going. I need to be with people, get out and get moving. And I was getting fed up with being on the inside. So being able to be in the office, be in the studio, be in the lodge with people, it's fantastic, and things just keep getting better. But, surprises happen, injuries happen, and I've just been able to reflect and enjoy the time. And you can't see my cast or my leg right now. But it's doing well, and I'm only a few days away from getting this cast off and starting physical therapy in the next stage of healing. But that's not why we're here. That's the news on what's going on in the world around me and what I'm seeing here. But what I want to talk to you about today, it is to get you to think about your life differently. But I want to do that through my story. Let me pose it to you this way in a question. What makes somebody completely reimagine their life, to leave everything behind for the potential of making an eternal impact? Well, that's my story. That's what Heather and I did. But how did we get there? Well, it was April of 2016 that I was on my way to be with two very special people. Now, one of them was or is a famous missionary who's written many books about what God's doing in the Middle East. And the other was a mega church pastor who had an incredible congregation and church that they had had for decades in San Diego. And I was on my way to meet them at Pastor Ray Bentley's house. Pastor Ray has passed away, but his legacy lives on. Back in that time, I was going to be at his house with our friend Tom Doyle. Now, Tom has been a part of writing and chronicling what God is doing in the Middle East. Some people call him the Indiana Jones of the Middle East. In Ray Bentley's living room with Tom Doyle, and Tom is unpacking the whole vision that he's got for the opportunity to serve more in the Middle East. Now, let me explain. Back in that time frame, and even through today, many people in the Middle East are coming to Jesus because of visions and dreams. Jesus coming to them in visions and dreams. And so them coming to know Christ, that led to a couple of things. First of all, people that needed to be discipled. And second, people that needed to be stood up to persecution. And so Tom's explaining that a yes to Jesus is a no to everything else in their life. That when they say yes to Jesus, that means that they're going to quite possibly lose their job, have their families disown them, maybe the government come after them, or worse. But I was a part of a cardiovascular rocket ship. At this moment, I had no business being there. My business was in medical devices. You see, when I joined Edwards Life Sciences, at the beginning, it had spun off from a bigger company, and it had about $500 million in annual revenue. Well, in the span of about 10 years' time, they went to $4.3 billion in revenue. The rocket ship, from a technology that was able to be introduced, changed all of cardiovascular surgery. It was amazing. And this had allowed me to live and work all over the world. In fact, I had taken my family to Switzerland. We were living in Europe for a number of years, launching the product, bringing it back to the US, taking it to Asia. What was I doing here? My specialty was medical devices and organizational strategy. I help groups accelerate growth, turn around, or rebuild and go in other directions. Well, let me take you back a little bit and explain why I was in this room with this discussion. It was just 6 months before that Heather and I were with Tom and Joanne in Israel on a tour of the Holy Land. It was incredible. And Heather and I felt so thankful, blessed, excited to be able to be with him because we had got a copy of his book earlier that summer. It was just selling like crazy. It was a book called Killing Christians. And that book chronicled people that would say yes to Jesus and then lose their life for it. And the stories were gripping. And we were reading these stories together, and I had taken the book with me to Singapore on a business trip. And I remember getting to the end of it and realizing the author of this book, Tom Doyle, was leading our trip to Israel later that fall. So we're on this trip with Tom, and we're already in love with what's going on in the Middle East. We're enthralled by the Holy Land. We've had this incredible tour. And I asked Tom to sign my book, and I'll never forget reading what he wrote. He said, "I think God's got something for the two of us. Well, we carried on staying in touch, speaking to each other after the trip. And it wasn't long after that Tom was asking Heather and I, hey, would you come out to Texas and lead worship? And Jeff, would you come out and speak at my conference? And so we did. And as we were getting closer and closer to Tom, I asked him the question, Tom, when are you going to go after that big vision that you've got? It was one that stopped him, but it's one that led us to have a further conversation. In fact, he said, Jeff, I'm coming to Southern California. Would you meet with Ray and I? I want to talk about all that's going on. You see, Tom had an idea, and that idea was to bring a base of training to support the persecuted church in the Middle East like never before. But Tom also had a problem. You see, the organization that he was a part of then was really large. They were a big cruise ship, an institution. And what he needed to do to be able to go after this opportunity was to be entrepreneurial, to be a speedboat, the ability to make changes really quickly and react to new learnings all the time. Maybe you've experienced that, what it looks like to be a part of an institution, an organization that's so big that you have to cut through all sorts of red tape and a bunch of mother may I's, and then you're told why it's a bad idea or won't work here. That wasn't going to do. Tom's passion and the idea that he had, it needed to be done now. The problem was now, not later, not if someone says it's okay. You see, with all of these people in the Middle East that were coming to Christ, there had to be something to help them. Well, I started asking natural questions that I would ask at a business meeting that I would attend. And as I started to bring out ideas and strategies and ways with which to bring all of these ideas into organization, I realized what was going on here. You see, Tom needed a strategic partner. Tom needed the things that I had been doing all my career, more and more and more. And here I was. This moment where God's come to town. He's inviting me into what he's doing. And I'm realizing this is what I'm really capable at. This is what I could do to join where God was at work. You see, the past few years, up till that point, I had been a part of the master's program. And the founder of the master's program, Bob Shank, was my coach. And he was preparing me for this. I didn't know it. He didn't know it. But that's the way it works, right? You arrange your life to be able to leverage your success. And this moment was all starting to make me feel dizzy. I've had some moments in my career where I said yes to something, and immediately afterwards, when I realized what I had signed up for, what I was going for, the risk that I was taking, knots in your stomach just naturally appear. Well, the turning point for me, or maybe the point of no return for me, was when Pastor Ray Bentley put his hand on my shoulder and said, Jeff, if you'll just trust God, he'll work out all the details. Well, that afternoon, I was driving home from San Diego to Orange County, where we lived. It's a great drive. It's about 90 minutes. And I was asking all of these questions. Like, is this Switzerland all over again? Part 2? Is Heather going to say yes? I mean, I remember when I told her that we were going to Switzerland, how she cried because she knew it was for real and we were really doing this. Would she feel that way about Texas? I mean, she's lived all of her life in California, with the exception of the years that we lived in Europe. And she was plenty happy to go back to California. Would she be ready for Texas and all the changes? Would she push away from this? And we hadn't even thought about all the implications to our family and career. I was just thinking about her. Well, there's a segment of that drive from San Diego to Orange County that if you've ever driven the 5 north or south there on the 5, that segment between Oceanside, California and San Clemente, California is a beautiful strip where you have nothing else to look at but to the west, the Pacific Ocean, beautiful. And to the east, these bronze mountains that go all the way down to the water. This is the Camp Pendleton area, the military base, and there's nothing to look at. There's no signs. There's no buildings. There's just cars driving along this beautiful stretch. And it was in this moment that I was starting to think, okay, God, and I said these words out loud. God, if you will convince Heather and you'll take care of all the details, I'm in. Now, I want you to note something about this is that when you're in that moment where you know that God's inviting you into something and you're working out the details and proposing back to God to be involved, ask big, because I'm imagining that I could have asked for a lot more. And that's not to say he didn't do a lot, because he did a lot. But it's just this moment where you're negotiating with God. And, well, those words got out of my mouth and I prayed that. And then I started thinking, how is this really, really going to work? How is those details going to work? I mean, we have all these stock options, business relationships, beautiful Orange County home, an amazing church we had really fallen in love with. And we're going to just sort of throw all that away to go to Texas? Well, like any good Southern Californian, we don't use our kitchens. We eat out all the time. And it's pretty much, by the way, the same in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But we went out to dinner that night, and it was just Heather and I and the two little boys, much littler than they are now. And they were running around, and it was just Heather and I. And Heather wanted to know, how did it go? She knew I'd been with Tom and Ray all day, so what happened? Well, here goes, I thought. And I just started to share with her what had happened, and I did not get 3 sentences. I tell you, 3 sentences into that discussion before Heather said, we're supposed to move to Texas. I'm in. God told me the last time we were in Texas that this is where we're going to live, and I've known it. And I'm in. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're in? Like, you're in? All right. And so I had this feeling, maybe you've had it, that your wife already knows where you're supposed to go before you know. I was discovering what she had already sensed before that. And so we had to start to talk turkey. Like, how is this really going to work? I mean, what about all these things we'd have to transition? We're going to need to capitalize a new business that we're going to start and a second home. We have a college to pay for one of our daughters and a life start to support for our other one. And how are we going to make revenue or feed our family? I mean, what's this business really going to be like? Now, note that in these moments where a crisis of belief, as Henry Blackaby likes to talk about, it starts to happen. The how am I gonna's, my friend Kevin Elstrom likes to say, the how am I gonna's, how am I gonna, God, how am I gonna? Well, we needed some sort of confidence to be able to jump. I mean, we certainly believed that God was going to take care of things, but maybe we should slow roll this, or maybe we just needed to sit back and wait. Well, this was the magic moment. It was at dinner, the same meal, we'd been talking through all of these how am I gonna's, and a text message comes in from an old vendor friend that I'd worked with for years. And his text went something like this: hey, Jeff, I'm taking half my business to Austin. I've got some deals in Texas that I need help with. Do you know anyone that can help me? Yes, I do know someone that can help you. It's me. And that was the beginning of a business that wasn't even incorporated yet. It was the beginning of, okay, God, you're already leading for us to be able to fund this thing and to produce in the move. Well, I started a business. I titled it Centix Life Technologies, and with a website and all of the proper paperwork filed, we were off and running. This was a big jump for me. As you can imagine, leaving all of the potential of the great career and company that's still a rocket ship, and the great relationships that I still have today, and the daughters that needed help getting started who are wonderfully married and doing very well today, I had to jump. How does someone go from an identity of business success to a significant life of eternal reward? Well, I believe it starts with this, is that you have to believe that we will all stand before the judge, all of us, and we will be evaluated for what we've done on this planet. And for those that have produced, there'll be an eternal reward. And that means that my choices here matter there. I mean, I already loved Jesus and I was grateful for an eternity secured because of his work. But to know that I could be a part of his business, to join him in what he was doing, and that he wanted to use the things that he made in me, well, the beginning of this process to live an extraordinary life, to go after it, is to believe that he's a rewarder. And that at some point in eternity, he's going to reward me for the work that I've done while I've been living in this body. Now, that's the beginning. The second stage of this is to become a student of yourself, to know yourself, to study the meology next to the theology. See, you have to know who you are, where your best contributions are, and be willing to put those out there as part of a plan that God could use, because he hasn't created you with all these skills and capabilities, relationships and assets, not to see those things put forward. But do you believe that you were made for such a time as this? High achievers, they seek to win at life. They want to take the path less traveled. They want to corner the market with their unique supply to a demand that's unending. Well, to get to that scenario spiritually, you have to reimagine your life. You have to reimagine the potential of your life and not let the title that you've got or the company name that's over top of you, so to speak, not be. Your brand should be the highest on that. And as your brand being the highest and most important thing that you're caring for in service to Christ, now you're wanting to use the best of you. Well, then you have to ask yourself, well, God, did you give me a dream already to take on that next mountain instead of reliving the same life I've lived over and over again? To take risk, or as we say, faith. Faith is spelled R-I-S-K. So have you thought about taking a leap forward? Because if you know eternity matters, today matters. If you're a student of yourself, what if you were then to make everything you own be a kingdom performing asset? That you would make everything that you're doing and everything that you have create. I know that when I went through the master's program on session 1, I was calling my wife, telling her the things that I'm hearing today is going to change everything. And they did. You see, my business is still going. My investments are still flourishing. Heather and I are collaborating on our property, DM Ranch, and making it a place for the master's program, for workshops, for retreats. And Tom Doyle, he's still doing Uncharted. We are now in year 7, seeing God do incredible things, including one of the largest evangelical churches built in the Middle East, in Jordan. I mean, what God is doing there as a center for training and support of the persecuted church, I never saw it coming. And my passion and the thing that I'm great at, the thing that God made me to do, to serve leaders and help them unlock their eternal potential. I love helping people accelerate and grow and turn around. But so much of what happened in my life, if you've heard anything that has been compelling or interesting, it starts with a yes and a willingness to reimagine who you are, not letting someone else's role statement or job title define you. This is the beginning for you, is to reimagine your life and to see what God could do in and through you. And I want to help you. That's why I hold this podcast, why I build it for service to successful marketplace leaders who love Jesus. Thanks for coming along and listening today. I want to help you to continue to be on that journey to work less, make more, get leverage, not stop using your genius. No, use it even more and produce incredible things in your family and the kingdom forever. You know what I really love, and I get these from time to time, are comments on what we're doing on this podcast. And I love taking that and shaping what I'm going to be talking about. I'd love your feedback. So would you leave us a rating or subscribe to this podcast and email me at jeff@leveragingsuccesspodcast.com or make a comment in the podcast and I'll get notified of it. And I'd love to interact with you. Finally, for those of you who are interested, I want to continue to point you to mastersprogram.org. This website explains the process with which you can build a life that matters forever. Thank you again for joining me on another episode of Leveraging Success. I'm your host, Jeff Gerhardt. Until next time, God bless you.